Okay, do you want me to start, Sarah?
Yep, I think we're ready to go when you're ready. Looks like we've got quite a few folks here. So thanks
Okay.
everybody for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. It's the CJCC Data Work Group meeting. Today is February 25th. Sarah, I believe you have the roll call based off the Zoom appearances, correct?
Yeah, but I will just give a shout out just for our minutes. Not everybody is always visible. So we've got Chair Clerk of Court Katie Shalley, myself, Sarah Benedict. We've got Sandy Frigo, Criminal Justice Assessor. We got Doug Ornson, Huber Sargent, Krista Vind with IT support. We've got Hannah Newberg down in records for the Sheriff's Department. We got Megan Cartmill with MPD records, and we got Holtra Heistand. Is that how you pronounce it? Coltra, your last name, with the bridge.
Yeah, Coltra Houston.
Yep. Houston. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. That's our roll. And then I'll just kind of shout out, announce if somebody else joins us late.
Okay, sounds good. Can I get approval of the minutes from the meeting of January 26th?
I'll make a motion, Katie.
Anybody want to second the minutes?
I'll second the minutes.
Okay, any additions or corrections that need to be made? Okay, hearing nothing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Sounds good. The meeting minutes are approved. Number 4 is the staff report.
All right, thank you. All right, so staff report. I'm going to be providing the CJCC annual report for 2020 to our county board. That'll be for their March meeting. And I am going to include our Smashboard that we're going to be digging into in a little bit today. That recidivism project report that we did last November and presented to the CJCC. And then also our OWI data that we crunched and prepped for the virtual community forum. We're going to include that in the annual report as well. We thought that would be really interesting data and information for our county board stakeholders. And that report, once it's finalized, still kind of working through it, but then we'll distribute it to all the work group members, and the council itself is, so you kind of, it's kind of like the rundown of activities for 2020 with not only this work group, but all the other work groups as well. So that'll be coming out here shortly. And then prior to the meeting, we were talking briefly, the CJCC executive met yesterday, and we're really taking a fresh look at the work groups, the utility and purpose. We've got a lot of different work groups and initiatives going on, 9 different groups. So we're really looking to prioritize and kind of refocus. So potentially some changes to our structure down the road, but nothing at this point, just kind of theoretical changes. So I think that is my staff report, unless there's questions.
No, that sounds good. Next item is the monthly dashboard for December of 2020.
All right, I'm going to share my screen and put the dashboard up for, here it is, December. So I did, I think you guys see it now. I did send it out in the packet. I did have a couple of things that I corrected and wanted to add, and those are in yellow. So we'll kind of go through those. But so this is the interesting month of December 2020. It really was a kind of probably our lowest numbers as far as just the jail count and program folks overall. That the up and down of COVID last year certainly affected our jails operations and the number of people that are coming in and out of jail. So we only had 23 bookings in the month of December, which is just a remarkably low compared to what we would typically see, not only in a average COVID month, but, an average year as well. The also kind of note, and Doug, since you're here, I'm wondering, the demographic split, in November, we had like 22% were Black. So I'm just wondering from, if you could tell us off your top of your head, are those demographics, are those of the people that are just booked in for that month, or is that kind of the composition of inmates that you have?
Just booked in for that month.
Okay. So that's where we can see, numbers kind of go up. Like November, there was 22% Black. December, there's 0% Black. So just kind of, wild swings because they're low numbers, So
yeah, well, and that's the thing. When you have such low numbers of bookings, one person represents a pretty big percentage a lot of times. So
yeah. That's right. We're still seeing the trend where on the snapshot, so this is just kind of one day in time, but more folks are being held pretrial versus the serving. So we're kind of seeing a flip in those numbers this year. Looking down to the proxy data. So we're still getting proxies in, but those are definitely at a slower pace this year. But the trends are similar to what we're seeing. We're seeing that it's the majority are low risk to medium risk, and they're coming in with substance use issues or domestic violence or DC or battery are kind of the main criminal offenses that we're seeing folks come in on. Still seeing, a good representation of the women, the females, as far as that law enforcement stop, and then also minorities. And again, because our numbers are so low, just like Doug said, one individual can really swing those numbers overall. Pre-charge data. We did have kind of a staff change in the DA's office with a pre-charge diversion coordinator. So I think there was kind of a natural lull with just that vacancy and then getting the new staff up to speed. But referrals started coming back in for pre-charge. And then the numbers continue to creep up. So there was just an error in the number from the draft that I had sent you guys out. So this would be the accurate number here for the pre-charge diversion. So really, program to date, we're seeing about 74% of the folks actually complete the program. Again, this is separate than recidivism. And if they're coming back, that was different measurements. DAGPs, so these continue to come in during the course of the year. We'll look on the Smashboard here in a little bit, but the numbers are actually low for compared to an average year as far as the number of DAGPs coming in. And then we still see that, the majority of them aren't getting new charges. They're just not completing their conditions for that agreement. So it's getting revoked. I want to switch down here to the top program. So that's our treatment opportunity program. So referrals started to tick up a little bit in December, a couple more enrollments. We've got about 45 active for the year. And then we did have a termination and a success. So that program is kind of sitting at that 63% as far as completion rate overall. I'm going to save it for the Smashboard actually. Let's see, the failure to appear rate. Interesting, we're still kind of seeing things a little bit backwards, meaning if somebody's getting a text message, you'd think they'd be more inclined to show up for their court date. But that group, it does have a little bit slightly higher failure to appear rate, which is just kind of a strange anomaly. Moving over to the treatment courts. So I was wanting to add, and I wanted to get your guys' feedback, the year numbers on here. And then also the number of referred in a month. So we see the number. We talked last month, a good goal for the CJCC is really kind of seeing our program referral numbers go up and ultimately the program participants go up. So are you guys okay if I try to add another kind of column on here for the referrals for those programs? We do have them on the top in the pre-charge diversion. Yeah, okay. So, I'll try to get those in here. And if not, certainly the January, all the 2021s, we'll just start that moving forward. Next page here, the assessment data. So this is where we got Sandy going into the jail and doing the screening. This has been, certainly hampered by the lockdown in jail and just COVID, just having less access to the inmates. But we're still seeing, again, some of the general trends where, we're seeing a lot of folks that are reaching the level of diagnosis or what would be a probable diagnosis on their mental health screener. We're still seeing meth primarily as that problematic drug, followed by alcohol. And then Sandy continues to do assessments for the folks that are referred to the different programs so we can get them their needs addressed. Sandy, anything that you'd like to add on your December numbers? I guess, are there any trends that you're seeing?
No, nothing to add right now, Sarah.
Okay. And then moving over to lastly to our reentry program. So again, this program's just been impacted by just jail kind of being limited, where it's difficult to move people around. We're trying to keep people safe. So the orientations were kind of hit and miss in 2020, and then the program numbers as well. So this was actually a good month for reentry. We had 6 folks in. For the year, we only had 39 in the program. But they're all getting assessed. So Sandy's still having opportunity to meet with them, with jail's assistance, and then really assess their needs. And then PICA in the jails making the plan. And then we've got our peer support specialists out in the community trying to help support them when they make that transition. So we continue to see the same kind of needs, mental health needs, alcohol and other drug needs, and also just the need for that ongoing medication, which was quite high. So, and, these are the folks that, are kind of our captive audience, and they certainly have a lot of criminogenic needs. These are, the big 6. It's really, they have needs, everything except for education overall. And they tend to be our higher risk population. So that really is a group that if we can make an impact on, we can see lower recidivism down the road. But that's our December numbers. So comments, questions, other information that you guys would like to see on a monthly basis?
No, I think it looks good so far.
All right.
Item number 6 is the 2020 Smashboard draft.
All right. Okay, I'm going to share again. And I'll pull up our Smashboard here. All right. So this is our effort of really taking all of our monthly dashboards and really smashing them all together so we get a kind of a consistent picture of the year. And we've been doing this year after year after year. So we're kind of getting some interesting data sets here. As we know, COVID is just putting a big asterisk on really all of our numbers. So I'm just kind of keep that in mind as we go through it. But I'm going to start with the jail trends. So we've got all of the 12 months listed. We've got all of our data that we've been collecting that Doug provides and Rita makes on the dashboard. And then we've got our totals that we've averaged up to kind of see really how it lines up. Generally, our bookings, when we go down here, our bookings are down about 50%, and that makes sense. We had less people going into the jail overall. Our average daily population, it was down about 22%. And the proportion of those that are DOC, kind of fee for service or fee-based beds, is a higher proportion. So that's actually good for the jail's bottom line when we're talking about that proportion there. Looking over here, we do have, because of COVID, the Huber block was certainly impacted. So we have a lot less folks that were on Huber per month on average, while the EM pretty much stayed steady, a little bit lower than what we would see in previous years, but not too much impacted. As far as the demographics, we, kind of at that 25% female, not too far off from what we would see in a normal year. Looking at demographics, it's really interesting how over the years we're seeing the jail population become less white, more Black, and really kind of staying steady as far as the number of Asians and Native Americans that come in. When we reflect on our kind of just general population, which isn't always our criminal justice population, it's only Asians are really on par with the percentage, that we see, that they would be in the general public as far as us having contact. The rest we're having, some underrepresentation, overrepresentation of other groups. And, again, our numbers are so low, we can really get kind of some different trends, but we are trending in a different direction. Our community is changing as well. And once we will have some new census data, it sounds like they're not going to release it until September. But our census data is over 10 years old. So we have had a lot more folks move into our community overall. So we should see those rates shift as well. Looking at the snapshot, the composition, again, this is something that we've seen really shift over time, where that pretrial population is getting to be larger than those that are sentenced, and then the probation, even though they also restricted the number of people going into jail, that percentage just held fairly steady. Any questions on the jail data? All right, moving down to the proxy data. I have this in red because I want Rita to double check my work and my math here. But generally, looking at the proxy data, the numbers are lower than a typical year because we had less law enforcement out there kind of making contact. And then of the contact, they were probably more significant charges that came in. So a little bit lower than past years, but actually, not too far off. Trends are the same, where 50% of those that law enforcement have contact with are low risk on the proxy. 33% come in at medium risk, and then a smaller percentage at the high risk point. We are seeing more of those proxies come in that are incomplete. So that's that need for ongoing training for law enforcement. And then looking at the major charges that are coming in. So again, we're still seeing that 30+% of the proxy contacts are drug and alcohol related contacts. So OWIs are still a driver of crime and our resources. THC and meth. There was a lot of meth cases that came in last year as well. I haven't seen the data from the DA's office on total cases, meth cases, but just kind of anecdotally, they thought they were going to be at the same level or higher than previous years. So even though we have less people that we had contact with, less people coming into the jail, we're still seeing meth to be that major driver of crime activity. Looking at the demographics, again, we got the females, the minorities, veterans, probation, stout students, and restitution. Not too far off from an average year. So again, I think what the Smashboard's helping us establish is, once we start to see some trends, even though the aggregate numbers may drop higher or lower, the trends still seem to be similar. Any questions on proxy? Okay. Moving to the pre-charge diversion program. So here, this one's interesting. Our numbers actually are up in 2020 from 2019. So we're having more folks being offered the pre-charge diversion from the DA's office. I would like to know, and I added this on for me to get the additional information, the direct referrals from law enforcement. We know that law enforcement want to promote these direct referrals to the pre-charge diversion program, but they really haven't come in at any significant pace. So I think this can help us just kind of track that over time. We've been tracking it on, I think, on a monthly basis. It's really just putting it on the Smashboard. I need to double check this N number. We had two different numbers from Brad at the DA's office, so I will swing back and check on that one. As far as the completion rate dipped slightly in 2020 to 69%. 31% do not complete the program and are charged. This is that 6-month program. You watch a video, you do some thinking reports, you stay out of trouble, and your charges are dismissed. So we still see 31% of the people that are given that opportunity don't even complete it. And then overall, since the program began, we've got that 74% success rate and 26% are not completed. So that has also been kind of a consistent number through the course of the program. So this really provides an off-ramp for a lot of low-level crimes that come through our system, and saves all that system time and effort down the road for those that complete it. Those that don't complete it, their case comes back through again. So, and those are monitored by the clerk of courts in the DA's office. Any questions on pre-charge? All right, TOP. All right, this is our TAD grant, our state grant for treatment alternatives and diversion. 2020 numbers are lower than we've seen in past years. So overall, let's see, my notes on top, 39% reduction in the number of referrals in 2020 that came through. And then the number that started in 2020 is about half that is what we had started in 2019. So referrals lagged, the actual offers, the agreements kind of lagged. So we had less numbers overall. But as far as the numbers served, we were just about at that 50 mark. Our estimate is that we serve 60 a year. So we weren't too far off kind of what we expect to serve in an average year, but certainly lower numbers. This program, we also saw a dip in the completion rate, and that's a trend we saw in all of our programs this year. I think it reflects just the difficultness that people had in struggling with COVID, and if they had kind of already had mental health, substance use issues going on, those could have been exacerbated by the COVID and just isolation and all this stuff going on with the pandemic. But the completion rates dipped to 62%. But since the program started, pretty much, we're at that 62% the last 2 years. Actually, that number is not updated. So I gotta look at that. Oh, crap. Sorry. There we go. All right, I'll have to look at that one. All right, moving right along. Unless there's questions, holler out if you guys got questions. DPAs. Okay, so this one's kind of interesting because Katie, you thought, just anecdotally that maybe you guys were seeing more agreements come through in 2020, and it looks like it was quite a few less agreements in 2020. There could be more in the works, and we could still see those kind of come through. But overall, there was 162 that started in an agreement, and those agreements can be anywhere from 12 months to 36 months. So that's why they're kind of a rolling average. The number that ended in 2020 would be 246. So kind of similar to past years. And then we've got about 57% of those being successful, 43% unsuccessful. These include agreements that are monitored through TOP or pre-charge. It wouldn't be pre-charge, it would be TOP program. And then agreements that are not monitored and folks that are not assessed. So, it's kind of a hodgepodge. And we see that, for those that do get it revoked, it's a condition violation. So they're either not completing one of their agreed upon conditions or not doing it in a timely fashion to show that they've actually completed that versus getting new charges.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I know court staff have been saying like it feels like we're doing deferred agreements for everything that, maybe would have been a probation sentence. So yeah, those numbers are quite a bit lower than normal.
Yeah.
I guess I'd be curious is for those that get revoked from their deferred agreement, then are they getting probation? And then do they fail on probation too? Like how many programs have we put them through that really isn't successful? But
yeah, well, that's a good question.
Sarah, for the 2020 numbers, the 140 and the 104, it comes to 244.
Okay. So yeah, that's the number off too. Thank you, Sandy. Because we need to figure that. We just want all of our numbers to add up and the math to be clear. So I will take a peek at that. Okay, I should probably hide these two. Okay. Thank you. All right, so also interesting. We're getting in. So okay, I guess final thought on this. So we haven't done our dashboards for January or February of this year. So it'll be interesting to see if the some of those DAGPs that your office is seeing are actually from this year versus last year. And that's why all of a sudden kind of feels like there's more of them coming in. Because I think there is a backlog in cases. And I think that's part of the challenge. And Katie, as I kind of go over the court appearance numbers, I guess I have some theories and let's see how it pans out here. So the number of court criminal case hearings scheduled was actually up compared to a typical year by quite a bit. The number of hearings held was, up from last year and not too far from the previous years. Our appearance rate just fell a little bit overall, and this includes everybody. The number of text messages sent was, not too far off of previous years, but the percentage of people that opt in that service actually dipped a little bit, but pretty consistent with past years as well. So even though we're doing a lot more virtual meetings, you'd think that more people would opt in for some of these technology solutions to help them kind of remind them of it since they're already getting a little more techie. I think we're all getting more techie because we've had to be. So I guess I thought that number would have went up a little bit. So of those that were sent and held, that's where, that they've got a higher failure to appear rate, which is just interesting. And then for those that didn't get a text message, they have a little bit lower failure to appear rate. So it seems like the court was busier. There was more hearings, more, hearings scheduled, more hearings held, but Katie, we're having less agreements and less outcomes. So in your, I guess, perspective, do you think a lot of these were kind of continuing the court date, or they were
Yeah,
kind of
a
just
lot of
dragged along a little bit?
continuances. Yeah, I
Okay.
was gonna say like in March, pretty much our calendars, we had a ton of hearings held. They just got kicked down the road to another date. We were kind of
Okay.
hopeful, thinking like in March that July we'd be back to normal in person. So we scheduled them for July. Then July we're still in Zoom. So we had a lot of hearings. A lot got rescheduled though too.
Okay.
Um, I don't really know how to analyze the ones that signed up for the text messaging, didn't appear. That's a hard one. I think some of it could be a difference between having a public defender on your case and having a private attorney too. Um,
Okay.
I know we hear a lot from the public defenders, like, I can't get a hold of my client. Well, if they sign up for the text messaging and the attorney can't get a hold of them, normally their phone is dead, lost, or it's a burner phone and we got a new phone number. And that's going to stick unless they change their phone number with us. Every hearing they have going forward, they'll always get a text, but it's always going to report that they was sent, but maybe they failed to appear. Does that
Yes.
kind of
Yep.
make sense? It's not a good number, so we don't ever take it out unless they update it with us.
Right. Right. I know Sandy and I are looking at some software for the pre-trial assessment process, and one of the kind of features is additional text messaging for people. So that was kind of exciting to think about. Because this appearance rate overall, I mean, is pretty darn good. Even though we're like, that's 85%, that's a B. We can do better than that. It still is, compared to most jurisdictions, really good. But we know that potentially with some just simple technology or ability to reach people, if we had their correct information, that can, the research shows that that's probably the most effective thing to get people to show up for their court date, because they're just disorganized or not staying kind of on top of appointments and scheduling that they need to do, versus willfully trying to not show up. But it's just interesting how it was a busy court calendar for our court staff overall. And then think about that Zoom, kind of adjusting and adapting to Zoom on top of it. They really, really did a good job this past year.
Well, and another, oh no, sorry, not to cut you off, Sarah. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, just enduring, just kind of going the day to day, just trying to get through this.
Yeah. Well, another thing that we did in 2020 that we previously have not done in criminal cases is we actually mailed out a notice of hearing. Previously, kind of our practice in Dunn County was if they were in court, physically present, and the court said your date is March 15th, we never would mail them a notice of hearing because they were physically there. There was no need to. Well, due to COVID now having the Zoom information, we're sending a notice of hearing to every person on any case type across the board. So in addition to the text messages, they're now getting a notice of hearing where previously they didn't. So I guess I'd really be curious if you did try doing like the additional texting and emailing or contacting them, what the success rate would be, because we've actually revamped our measures to try to get the correct information to them. And I'll tell you, we get a ton of return mail every week. The challenge is these people aren't going into the jail, so they're getting stopped by law enforcement. Who knows if the address they give law enforcement is correct? That's what goes on their criminal complaint. They maybe don't get the text message agreement paperwork, so we have no way to text them because we have no contact information.
Yeah.
And it just kind of goes on from there. If we don't have a good address from the beginning, it's really hard to get a hold of them. And now they're so used to appearing for Zoom. They'll call the day before court, like, can I just appear for Zoom, even though it says in person? And we're kind of at the mercy to say, well, we want you to appear. So I guess, the judge will let them appear by Zoom just to have the hearing held, especially if there's not going to be a resolution or a sentencing. If it's just like more of a status, they just appear by Zoom, and next month or the month after, they'll call back again. Can I appear by Zoom? Yep, here we go again.
Okay. Well, that is really interesting. So they are getting the letters, but we're not seeing that necessarily impact the percentages. And I guess I thought because Zoom is way more convenient, that we would actually have more appearances, more people show up for their court dates. But yeah, so we'll
I think
just.
I think it helps our Tuesday initial appearance dates for those people that were just like got a ticket on 94, charged them out criminally. Those people are really happy to appear by Zoom, where previously they didn't want to drive from Chicago here, so they were getting a warrant or, or in Minnesota. But those ones we're seeing more appearances, I think, on.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And then there can be quicker resolution too. All right, moving right along. And just so you guys know, once I put this in final form, this is kind of a header, so I can just take those sheets out. So that's why every other sheet, you see that. Pretrial assessment. Here's Sandy's world that she lives in. So again, because of limited access to the jail and just COVID, Sandy had to adjust her contact with people. So for the months of April, May, and June, some of the assessment tools, they were not completed. And then we've got a partial completion in March and August. So, and you can kind of clearly see that our numbers are, half of what they would be in a typical year. But what I think is interesting is some of the trends are just the same, even though it's a smaller group. So we still had a whole lot of people come through the jail for failure to appear, 618 in 2020 compared to, about 800 plus in a typical year. So that's still quite a bit of people that are coming in. Sandy was able to meet with about 31% of those that were booked and held. So that's a little bit less than she typically would. And again, that's because just limited access and, competing in the morning, meaning there's, public defender can be in the jail. We can have other people in the jail, and Sandy's trying to get in there as well. So she did adjust meeting them either on the phone or through the contact booth, kind of adjusted throughout the year. Kind of depending on the openness of the jail and the numbers. So kind of wildly, goes up and down. Looking at and I guess I should put this up here, this asterisks. The mental health screener. So about half as many were done in 2020, but as you can see, the rates are pretty consistent. About 63% are identifying what would be symptoms consistent with a diagnosis of a mental health disorder. So for those that are willing to participate, they're definitely having some mental health issues going on. When we're looking at the screeners for the substance use, again, about half as many came through, but the trends are just remarkably consistent. So we're just seeing that meth to be, now it's up to 37%. Alcohol, which is interesting about the alcohol, the number went up a little bit, but the severity actually went down to mild. The severity of meth is severe, meaning when people identify it's a problem, it's not a little problem, it's a big problem. Where mild alcohol, they, sometimes affects their abilities, but it's not to the, and this is self-appraised. So you got to take that with a grain of salt too. The numbers for marijuana went down quite a bit. The numbers for heroin and opioids also went down, but the severity here is severe as well. The marijuana was mild. And then all other drugs, those numbers went up, but it was primarily prescribed, like one-off, like somebody's overtaking antidepressants or somebody's overtaking anxiety medicine. So it was mainly prescriptions and then one LSD that came through. And then consistent, again, from previous years, we're seeing about 30% are saying, no, I don't have a problem at all. So whether that's true or not, we're still seeing that same 30% or so. Sandy, anything that you'd like to add or give some context to?
No, I mean, nothing that you haven't already spoken to Sarah as far as, just the trends are very, very consistent, even with the lower numbers this year.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, moving right along. Treatment court. So I've got some gaps to fill in here on our treatment court numbers, but both our treatment court and family treatment court had much lower levels of participation as far as referrals coming in, and lower numbers as far as the people that start. So, typically we'd have, a dozen or more people start the program. Looks like we had about 5 last year. And then we're looking at the outcomes. We had 11 people end the program, only 3 of those successfully. The other 8 were unsuccessful terminations. So upside down on that termination rate overall for treatment court. This I think is reflective again of COVID. It was difficult to get some people engaged and started without really having the ability to meet with them in person. That was kind of adjusted over the course of the year, but people that were struggling struggled. And, when we're talking about this is our high risk, high need group, a lot of them struggled. And it became to the point, what we see largely is with treatment court is when there's use going on, we can adjust that or treat that with treatment response. But if it continues, it almost always leads to new criminal activity. So quite a few of the terminations weren't due to kind of the relapsing as the primary cause. It was a new crime, so domestic abuse or significant crimes that were coming in, or they were revoked from probation, meaning they just weren't able to be managed successfully in the community overall. So again, that was a hard year for treatment court, and those numbers need to be updated. So I hope to do that here. Family treatment court, again, this also is kind of the folks that really have a lot of needs in substance use as that primary. The number of referrals were pretty low in 2020. We've already made some changes in that program, so we've got some automatic referrals right from the get-go versus kind of wait for those people to get the services that they need. The numbers that started, so we only had 2 new start in 2020, and then we had 4 graduates. 2 were successful, and then 2 were terminated overall. So, and then we had 1 general discharge to that program. Any questions on, and I guess I would just add that, treatment court, we got it, our family treatment court, we got it up and running. And then now we got it stabilized. So now we're looking to really improve get those referrals in, get the people started. There's a lot of people that could use the service. So it's just a matter of getting them referred, engaged, and going in these supports. Okay, any questions on the treatment court information? All right. Getting down there. Yeah, last one. Sorry, doing all this talking. Okay, our reentry program, as I mentioned, yeah, this one was also impacted by COVID. So the numbers are lower than we would have in our previous years. But we're up to 180 people have been served by that program. So, that's huge. Those are people that were in jail, held accountable, voluntarily agreed to be part of this program, and then can take part in whatever kind of services that they need. So quite a few people have been impacted there. I need to double check on the probation numbers for 2020, but typically we see about 60% already are on probation. So they're already having case managers out there. Sandy does the assessment piece. So we had only one person that I think was released prior to getting fully assessed. But as far as the assessments, we are again seeing that there are significant needs that this group has. You know, the only thing that wasn't a clear need was education, meaning they've typically have had success in the educational realm, but not seen success in these other areas of their life. Likewise, mental health, you know, these are just really consistent stats year over year. You know, we have folks that need mental health treatment, substance use treatment. They need medications upon discharge from jail. They need critical documents like licenses and social security cards. 64% don't have a safe place to go upon discharge. Quite a few, 67%, don't have any transportation, reliable transportation. And then the education component's much lower. So there's only 21% that need that general education. So education doesn't seem to be the big driver here. It's you know, substance use, it's mental health, it's who they're hanging out with, what they're doing. And those things can feed on one another. So the more we can interrupt those kind of cycles, the better. Looking at gender, we did see, you know, more females take part in the program proportionately. We're seeing most of these participants are high risk. So that is really, you know, the research tells us the more we put our efforts into that high risk population, the more crime reduction we're going to see. So we are getting to the right people there. And then quite a few lower, medium risk and low risk. Low risk people, you know, those are the ones that really, if we can avoid them being in jail to begin with, the better, because they are exposed to, you know, higher risk criminal elements in the jail. But we know that, no, you don't go to jail based on your risk. You go to jail based on your crime. So these might be significant crimes. They're just a low risk to reoffend. And then of those 39 participants, 38 of them had kids, or they had 38 kids combined. So average one child per person. But just think, you know, this is trying to kind of emphasize that these aren't just individuals. They represent families and children that are probably in need of services as well. Okay, that is the Smashboard review. Any questions, impressions, or things that you'd like to see added or double checked?
I don't think so. It's a lot of information if they read it and can comprehend it, really.
All right. Okay. All right. So I'm going to continue to work on this and get those highlights in yellow more finalized. And then this will be published. We have an EBDM meeting later on today. We're going to just take a quick look at it, even though it's in draft form, because we really want the data to be driving decisions that we're making across the board, and us getting together and kind of reviewing the data and, you know, saying that, yeah, that sounds consistent. It really can help us move, you know, the priorities of our council overall.
Okay, so moving on to number 7, update on ongoing projects.
All right, so we do have the ongoing recidivism project. So I've got Rita in my office. She is continuing to look up that comparison group. So we have, you know, those that have completed programs, but then we want to compare them to something. So she is, it's kind of a manual, a lot of information that she's having to manually pull from one system and put in our spreadsheet and then look up in CCAP. So it's filling her time, but that project is going ahead. And then, you know, I guess our goal is to, towards the end of the year, present that information again to our CJCC at an annual occurrence. So that is getting worked on. And then the second project that we're going to want to start working on is just the annual reports and trends. Typically, we present that to our CJCC in April, or the next one will be July. But just kind of looking at our 10-year trends in the criminal justice system. That's largely based on annual reports, and I know a lot of those reports are just getting finalized now. So we'll be starting to collect that information. So if anybody does have their annual reports finished, and if you can ship them to me, that would be great. I'll just, kind of wait and be patient, just knowing that everybody has different timelines. But at some point, we're going to want to pull all that stuff together and present it to the CJCC later this summer. So that's the update on projects.
Okay, so then we are at the next meeting date.
Yeah, I can send out a doodle or any particular, I know this is kind of a strange time for us, I guess, getting together as a meeting. But I was just trying to look to get away from some of the noon meetings as well. And just realizing that some of you, that's your only break that you have in the day. So, but it seems like this kind of worked for some of the folks and not others. But if there's any preference, I guess, as far as the date and time for the doodle, I can include that.
This time worked well for me, I guess. I'm fine if you want to send out some dates that work for your schedule, and then we can go from there. Do we want to consider meeting monthly, or do we want to go to like every other month?
Let's see. So we do have, I guess, a CJCC meeting in April. If there's data that we would need to present, I think it would probably be the dashboard. I don't think we would do the annual reports until a little bit further down. If we're doing that project, I think we would want to get together at the end of March. But if we don't, I don't think we need to get together at the end of March.
Okay.
Although we got January and February dashboards, so I don't know how clear any of that is.
Well, we could get together in March just so we can revamp that. And then after the April CJCC meeting, maybe we go to like every other month or something like that for this work group.
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Perfect. So we'll wait for Sarah to send out a doodle poll for our next meeting date and time. And other than that, we're good to go. Thank you all for participating, and our meeting is adjourned.